Welcome, Katie.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
I'm so glad Clayton connected us so that we can have this conversation.
Me too.
I have so many things to ask you about the food world, and I also want to dive into your personal life and bring all of it together. But I always love to start with what brought you into this career and sort of take us back. I know that you were cooking with your grandma at a young age. Take us back as far as you want to go.
Well, I grew up in a family that was obsessed with food, and that was in a time before that was a thing. It was just how we like to live. I'm from a small town in West Virginia. My grandma was my babysitter and an incredible cook. She just had such a natural talent for it. It just was like nothing for her to whip up a big meal. And she did pretty much every night
Wow.
a big meal. And we had fresh cornbread every night, or she'd make homemade rolls. Everything was fresh. And my grandpa had an incredible garden that our produce would come out of. So we were eating locally. We were eating, I'm guessing it was organic the way that he grew everything. And we just didn't even know it was a thing. That was just how we ate. The freezer was filled with meat that his cousin would raise. And
Wow, pure gold.
Yeah, it really was. And I just thought everybody had great food like that. And then sometimes I'd go spend the night with a friend and I'd come home in the morning and say, Mom, they had canned biscuits. like I couldn't believe
That's
it.
amazing.
It was like the shade. And my mom, you go to somebody's house and she'd lean over and say, don't bother eating the cake. It's a mix. She hates when I tell
It's
that
incredible.
on her. But we loved food. But I never thought of it as a career. That was just not something that was even in the realm of possibilities. I went away to college. I went to Miami University in Ohio. I started working in restaurants. I took food science because I thought, well, this will be an easy way to fulfill my science requirement. And then the professor came in a white lab coat and said, if you're here because you like to cook, you're in the wrong place. This is serious chemistry. But I learned so much. And it was around that time that I got really interested in food writing. I would read Gourmet and Bon Appetit and Food and Wine, just anything I could get my hands on about food I was interested in. And I knew that I wanted more, that I wanted to go somewhere else. And so I wanted a big city experience.
It's funny. We definitely have that in common.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't even know how I knew that existed necessarily. I mean, when I was I think I was 16 or 17, I won a trip to New York.
Foreshadowing.
From one of those teen magazines I had written in and won the trip. And I remember my mom and I coming and just thinking this was the coolest place I had ever been. It was amazing. And we'd see the black town cars and we were like, who's in those?
Yeah.
And we went to a restaurant called, I'm rambling all over the place, but we went to this restaurant that's no longer here called Angelica's Kitchen. It was a health food restaurant. And I just remember loving it here. And so when I got really passionate about food in college, I decided I wanted to go to culinary school. And so that was what had brought me to New York. I didn't end up going. I ended up a whole other tangent.
Which we can get into if you want.
I guess I ultimately came to New York for a man, married and divorced, and then found my way. But I started working in a fish market when I first got here. I started a food blog back in the dinosaur ages of blogs.
What year are we talking?
This is 2004.
Wow.
I didn't even know what a blog was.
I'm bring it out of the archives. We want to see.
Yeah. I started it with a friend of mine.
Cool.
And we were really into Gourmet magazine and Ruth Reichel, who was the editor then. And so we were inspired by that and started this blog. And then I started getting writing jobs and ultimately started getting TV gigs. And then it took me a while, but I got on the Food Network. My show, The Kitchen, now has been on 11 years.
Wow.
We've done 500 episodes of it. And I feel incredibly blessed to get to have my passion as my job. It was definitely not something I saw for my future. I don't even know what I really saw, but this has been a great ride.
It seems like you really took your passion and turned it into something. Was there ever a point where you were like, is cooking going to be it for me? I know you said you didn't think of that as a career initially, but it seems like you really followed that path.
Yeah, I did have a point where I almost walked away from it. So I had hosted the first season of Top Chef. It was a disaster for me. Got fired from that job. And then I really wanted to have a show on Food Network. And I tried for like 7 years. And they kept telling me no. And I remember an exec writing me an email and saying, you just need to accept this is not going to happen for you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Everyone should hear that and look at where you are, because that's incredible.
I'd also like to point out that he no longer works works there, but I do.
Interesting tidbit.
Yeah. So I had a moment, 'cause writing was my big passion as well, where I almost walked away. I had gone to LA for a month and I thought I'd really like to try screenwriting. And I was on like day 25 of being in LA. And my friend Mark, who was my agent, he called me and said, you need to come back to New York to audition for this show, The Kitchen. And I said, oh, Mark, it's not going to happen. They've told me it's not happening for me. Like, I'm having a really good time out here. I was dating a guy, like having fun. I was like, I'm not changing my plane ticket. Yeah, I've already paid for this hotel. I'm not coming back early. And he said, get your ass on a plane and get back here. And so I listened, and thank God I did.
Wow. Yeah. What a full circle story. That's incredible. Okay, I want to take it back to your early 20s. You mentioned that you got married and divorced. We are all curious about Billy Joel.
Yeah, I got married really young. I met him when I was 21.
Wow.
And got married when I was 23. Got divorced when I was 28 or 29, something like that. And so my 20s, it was a very different experience than most of my friends. And I had to grow up really fast and had a lot of life experience in that time, but also in a way missed some life experience that people normally have during their 20s.
Yeah.
So I had to start dating again when I was like 29 and then into my 30s. And I had to learn how to date because that had never been
you went
something
right from
I did.
21 to married.
Yeah. Social media didn't exist. Apps did not exist. I missed all of that. So I had to learn to navigate. Like, I didn't understand the waiting to text somebody back or any of that.
You had no game.
I had no game whatsoever. I just was like, okay, you like me, I like you.
Yeah, like
next.
Let's do the thing.
Yeah. So I missed a lot of that and had to learn it. And I wasn't sure that love was in the cards for me and that it would happen. I kissed a lot of frogs before I met my husband, Ryan. And well, I shouldn't say a lot. I kissed some frogs.
Ryan, don't listen to that.
Yeah. I kissed some frogs.
Yeah.
I got my feelings hurt a lot. I wish so badly I could go back and tell myself not to accept crumbs.
Yeah.
And to speak up for myself. If there's one thing I hope that I can teach my daughter when she gets older is to speak up for yourself and to say what you want and to say when somebody does something wrong.
Yeah.
And that's something I'm still working on now. Is like, you know, if somebody wrongs you, you gotta tell them. And so I met my husband when I least expected it. I met him at work, and I got a real prince. Like I got the best guy. He is the best dad, and I feel really fortunate.
That's amazing. I want to hear all about that. In terms of going through a divorce at 28, having it be very public, what was that like for you on a mental health level? You said you kind of had to like relearn and re-experience your 20s. Like, what was going on for you mentally at that time?
I think that what really saved me during that time was starting surfing.
Oh.
Yeah, which was totally out of character for me. I was always the type of person that was kind of afraid of putting myself out there physically, afraid of getting hurt. And I was generally afraid of the ocean, like wouldn't really go in over my knees. And I was living at the beach. I was living in Sagaponack, and I would watch people surf. And I thought, that just looks really freeing. And I got in my car. This was totally just a wild hair. Got in my car, drove to Sag Harbor, bought a wetsuit, asked the guy at the counter for a surf teacher, and I started surfing.
That's incredible.
And I was obsessed with it. I loved it. It felt so free. And I think having that connection to nature was what really healed me. And experiencing, I loved the Hamptons. I think of that as my true home now. And it was a way to experience that area in a totally different way. And I felt really connected to myself. And also like the whole, you can look at a metaphor for surfing, that you've got this leash that attaches you to your board. You fall off, you can pull yourself back up, get on your board, and get on your own 2 feet. And it was a real meditation for me. And so I did it religiously for about 6 years.
Wow.
And then I kind of fell off with it. And I hadn't surfed for several years. And we just went to Costa Rica, and I got back in the water and went surfing.
Good for you.
And it felt so good to get on a wave. And it was pretty awesome. So I think like when you have a baby, you have a few years of kind of losing yourself. And so this was the first time for me getting back out there and doing it. And it felt like a connection to who I used to be.
Yeah, it's very symbolic.
Yeah.
So you go through this period, you lean into surfing, and you're dating. How old were you when you met Ryan?
I met Ryan when I was, let's see. This is a good question.
We can estimate.
I think it was 2016 when we met. I always get all my dates confused. I think I was 34. Yeah, I was 34 when we met. And I was doing a show called Beach Bites, where I would travel to different beaches and eat. And he was my producer.
Sounds like a dream, by the way, traveling to different beaches and eating.
It was a dream job. I remember when I went in and pitched that show, and when the executive was like, okay, yeah, let's do it. I was like, what?
You weren't expecting
actually
that.
said yes to this? How on earth did anyone say yes to this? So that was definitely a dream
job and dream man. So
Yeah.
he's working on the set with you. And so what was that like in terms of the sparks and all the things?
I walked in, I was like, oh, who's this guy? He is really hot. And I told Mark, my agent friend, and he said, do not sleep with your producer. You cannot do that. You do not want to be that type. And I was like, okay, Mark.
Sure, Mark.
Sure. So we kept it a secret. And sure enough, Mark gave the toast at our rehearsal dinner, saying how happy he was that I did not listen to him.
So sweet. I feel like I read or saw somewhere that Ryan saw you on TV and said to his friends or something like, I'm going to marry her.
Yeah. So he was at his brother's apartment, and his sister-in-law, Megan, she had the TV turned on. They watched Food Network, and he said, who is that girl? I'm going to marry her someday. And then he got the job on Beach Bites, and he actually took the job without knowing who the host was.
Oh, he didn't even know you were.
No, he didn't even know I was hosting. It was just like so much of production is word of mouth and people recommending you for a job. And he had a friend who called him and said, I got offered this job. I can't take it. Is it something you would want? And he was like, yeah, travel, beaches, absolutely.
100%.
And then it turned out that I was the host.
Wow, that's incredible. In terms of you being on TV and like, you know, coming from the South and not really having been in New York, and I assume not really having exposure to this level of
Not
fame
at all.
and being in front of people and an audience, like what was it like for you getting used to that, and how did you do it?
That's a great question. And I often look back and think, I don't know how I navigated that. I'll look back and think of some of the situations I was in my early 20s and think, how did I know how to handle that? That was a lot.
Yeah.
That would be a lot now. I just kind of just adapted.
Yeah.
And I remember somebody told me very early on, get a thick skin and get it fast. And that's some of the best advice I've ever received. I really do not let it bother me what other people think of me. And I can read something negative, and maybe for a minute I'm like, "Ugh, that's ridiculous." But it just kind of rolls off. And I also think like people are people, and somebody might have a job that makes them ultra famous, but at the end of the day, they're just a person, and everybody's the same. Everybody, for the most part, likes to sit around in their sweatpants and hang out with their family, and everybody's just doing the same thing.
Everyone is also not immune to being human, to your point. It's people have ugly behaviors, they talk shit, we all have that in common, right? And it's like, it's this sort of equalizer.
Yeah. And I think I learned a lot from my ex about entertainment business that, obviously I'm like a microcosm, like a tiny little thing what I do by comparison. I've learned, I think being professional is the most important thing, and being consistent in any job and like showing up and giving your all and doing the best that you can at whatever you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I also think it's really necessary to have, to your point, thick skin, but also to not care what other people think.
Yeah, it really doesn't matter. And you're not going to change somebody's mind if they come into it with a preconceived notion. If they want to believe one way, then that's their issue.
It also generally has nothing to do with you.
Yep. Exactly.
It's generally like a projection. And,
exactly. And I don't get my feelings hurt easily anymore. And so I would say the area of my life that I was the most sensitive about was dating and love. Like that was where I had a really tricky time. Everything else I was pretty much like, oh, I don't care. And I wish that I could have had that attitude about that because I did feel so deeply and hurt. But I think kind of once I met my person, none of that mattered.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think that, and like I experienced it on a much smaller scale with like dating and sort of having people in my business, and people are just curious innately, of course. But there's something about being like, that's my person and I've arrived.
Yeah.
Where you're like, don't really care. I have this like new kind of like security blanket. And I don't mean that we should like get that from another person necessarily, but there is this sort of like united front that you then get.
Yeah. And it puts things in perspective.
Absolutely. Okay. So I know that you've spoken a little bit about your fertility journey on your podcast and sort of what it took to get you to where you are with your beautiful 4.5-year-old daughter. Is that what you told me?
Yeah.
I would love if you could walk us through kind of what it was like going through that and what helped you to get to where you are.
Yeah, that was a really emotional, hard time. And also just like to compare it of saying like meeting my person, none of that mattered. Once I had her, it was like none of that mattered anymore. It just kind of not erased the pain, but just made it all seem like this was just what was taking me to her. So I thought because I was a really healthy person, I had a great diet, I exercised all the time. When I got married at 36, I thought that we would get pregnant on our honeymoon. Like it would just be nothing. And that's not the way that it happens. I learned so much about fertility and infertility. And I think women put a lot of pressure on themselves because of what other people say, of other people saying like, oh, well, if you would just relax, you would get pregnant.
Have a drink, go on vacation.
Guess what? I was relaxed at the beginning and I still didn't get pregnant. And women get pregnant in times of feast and famine and war.
Great point.
Yeah, there can be bombs going off and somebody's getting pregnant. So it's not necessarily because you can't relax. There's a lot of science there. So I started fertility treatments and I worked with a doctor here in New York, Dr. Rosenwax, who I think is amazing. And he was incredible. I went through 4 rounds of IVF. I had frozen my eggs at 32 with him. And
embryos or
eggs?
You froze them with the doctor.
Yeah, with the doctor at 32. None of those worked.
Oh.
Yeah, none of those were
viable.
viable.
Like they defrosted them and they were like, no go.
Defrosted, fertilized, went to turn into embryos, did not work.
I don't think people talk about that enough.
No, it is not a sure thing. And I will tell you, when I went in to meet Dr. Rosenwachs the first time at 32, which I was straight off of a heartbreak, and my friend who was older had said, you should freeze your eggs. And this was before people were talking about this openly. And he said to me, why do you want to do this? And I said, well, it's like an insurance policy. If I don't meet anybody, it's like I got money in the bank. And he said, no, no, no. Let me stop you right there. It is not. This is not a sure thing. And I didn't believe him.
No, of course. You're like, but yeah. Anyway, let's get the eggs.
Yeah. And I only got 5 on that first round. And he said to me, we should do another round right away. 5 is not enough for you to have. And I said, but I really want to go work out and I'm bloated and I just don't enjoy this. So I'll do it in a few months. I never went back and did it again. I didn't listen. And then I, got older. I tried again. I was living in LA. We were living in LA for a year. This was when we first started. And my friend sent me to this acupuncturist and she said she gets everybody pregnant. I know women who are 50 years old who've gotten pregnant going to this woman. And I was drinking this herbal sludge. That
you were doing it all.
Disgusting.
Not the sludge.
Yeah. And then it turned out that the herbal sludge I was drinking spiked my estrogen levels and made a small polyp that I had grow intensely big.
No.
That was also blocking me from getting pregnant. So a doctor in LA who worked with Dr. Rosenwach, she said to me, there needs to be one captain of this ship.
You were doing too much.
Yeah. And she said, let him be your captain of the ship and listen to what he says and stop all this other stuff. And so he was the captain of the ship and I listened, and I had gotten to the point where with that 4th round, I went into it and I thought, well, if this doesn't work, I'm just going to keep doing it. I am on this path and I am going to make this happen.
Yep.
I had met a woman who had done it 12 times.
Wow.
And so she was my inspiration. And I got that one embryo. That was all it took. And
Chills.
that's what everybody's got to remember. It's because it is a mind fuck when you start getting in there with all the numbers and you start out with, you have 18 follicles. You're going to get 18 eggs. You think like, I'm going to get 18 eggs. I don't have 18 embryos. Like, I'll have all these choices. I'm good. It just takes one. Yeah. And I got my one. Oh. And I'm so fulfilled with her. She is just the absolute greatest. So I feel like I know my purpose in life now. And it's like my life was divided in 2 sections, life before Iris and life with Iris.
Were you the kind of person that felt like you always wanted to be a mom? Like, did you have that maternal instinct, or would you say Iris like really brought that out of you?
I knew that I wanted a family, but it wasn't like I was dying to have her until I started trying, until I got married to Ryan. I really didn't have that, like, it was like the couple of months before we got married that I was like, okay, I'm ready. Let's do this. And then I worried about maternal instincts kicking in. Everybody would say, it's your instincts. You'll know how to take care of her. You'll know. And I thought, what if my instincts, what if I don't know? What if I don't know what I'm doing? And it was COVID and there was nobody around. And what are we going to do? Are we going to be just sitting here like in chaos of not knowing how to take care of a child? And it's true. Like your instincts do take over and you figure it out real fast.
Yeah. I wonder about that with myself because I'm not super maternal by nature, and people do say it kicks in, and I do want a family, but I wasn't the girl that was like born to be a mom,
Yeah,
that,
I
like,
never
energy.
thought of that. I didn't have that energy either.
What was it like for you? Did you give birth during COVID?
I did.
How was that?
So it was September 2020. And I actually had a really positive experience. I have been with my OBGYN for like 18 years at that point.
Wow.
And she's on Long Island. And I gave birth out there, and because of her and the nurses that were there on call that day, I gave birth at North Shore LIJ. They were incredible. It was this team of women in there, and I felt so taken care of. And I, had to wear a mask, and they were in full PPE.
Could Ryan be in the room?
He could be in. Thank goodness. I can't imagine the women that had to do that without a partner. How scary it would be. but I felt great about it. And I loved the birthing process so much that sometimes when I can't sleep at night, I go back in that room and think about those moments and think about like when they handed her to me and put her on my chest, of just like the intense love and emotion that I felt, and it like calms me down, and that's how I go to sleep.
That is like one of the more beautiful things I've ever heard. And I also think it's really nice to hear. I mean, obviously there's such a broad spectrum of experiences, but to hear such a positive one, especially for people that are fearful of giving birth or have been through a long fertility process like you, were you extra anxious during pregnancy because of all that had been required to get you there? Or were you kind of like...
That's a great question. I, at the beginning, had such debilitating anxiety. It was so bad because I had gotten pregnant a couple of times and lost it. So I just was so fearful, like white knuckling.
Yeah.
And I got the flu, like a terrible flu.
By the way, the flu is the absolute worst. I would take that over COVID. I would take COVID over the flu any day.
Oh, for sure. I had a horrible flu, and once I got better, I was like, well, if I got through that, then I think I can get through just about anything.
Yes. This baby is resilient.
Yeah. So I was okay after that. And I had, for the most part, an easy pregnancy. I probably had 2 or 3 days of morning sickness, and that was it.
Wow.
And I loved being pregnant. I loved it. Like, I loved all the feelings of it. I loved my growing belly. I never felt so comfortable in my body as when I was pregnant. And still, like, I think back, like, that was when I loved myself the most physically. So for me, it was a really great positive experience. I was really scared of what childbirth was going to be like, and it wasn't nearly as bad as everyone had made it out to sound. I got lucky, I guess, in that regard. Afterwards, I feel like no one really tells you what happens afterwards.
Like what were the challenging parts for you?
It's just really painful afterwards. Like,
yeah,
you are like ripped apart down there.
Totally.
So I think that people don't talk about that as much because they don't want to scare women.
Yeah.
But I think you need to be prepared for what it's going to be like. You're also so highly charged emotionally of these overpowering love feelings and all of your hormones. I mean, some people have opposite of having the postpartum depression. So either way, you're having extreme emotion. And you're dealing with a lot of pain in that area. And it's like, oh, is that ever going to go back to...
recover?
Is it ever going to recover? And I had an episiotomy, which is where they have to cut you to get the baby out.
Oh.
So a little snip. Which I really, really did not want to have, but I couldn't get her out.
I assume you were like epiduraled.
Oh, yeah. So I didn't feel it when it happened, but I felt it afterwards. So that was really, really hard. And I think had it not been COVID, I would have gone to the doctor earlier, because it's 6 weeks until you see your doctor.
Which is kind of wild. You're just
it really is
doing it on your own.
Like, I think it should be like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You go get a checkup and make
then
sure
they're like,
everything's
6 weeks.
okay.
Oh, you can have sex again. It's like,
Yeah.
probably like, what?
I was not having sex at 6 weeks. No. Like,
That's
farthest
insane.
thing from my imagination would have been having sex at 6 weeks.
Totally.
Like, no, thank you. When I hear people say like, oh, we got a hotel room for this 6-week checkup, I'm like, what?
In what world?
There's no way on earth I would have been having sex at 6 weeks. Like, zero desire. Anyway, I think if I had been able to go to the doctor earlier, that I would have recovered a little better. So I think it's like one of those, after you have a baby, like, really listen to your body, and like, if something doesn't feel right, that means it's probably not right.
Yeah, as always.
Yeah.
In terms of your wellness routines and rituals, whether during pregnancy, postpartum, things you like to do now, like, what stands out most to you?
I have a really hard time making time for myself.
By the way, you can also say it's watching Bravo on the couch. That's
yeah.
cool too.
Oh, I think of that as self-care.
Me too.
I have a hard time making time for myself. I feel so much better though when I can exercise mentally and physically. So that's really important to me. And I've made a real effort to try to work it in more. Like today, I knew that I wasn't going to have time to exercise today. So I wore my nice sweats to come here and I put on ankle weights and I power walked over
I didn't know
here.
you had ankle weights on when you walked. I love
Yes.
that. Do you do like a ball of bangle?
Yeah, the bangle weights. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I have those. I put on the ankle weights. I've even done that in the airport where I'll wear the ankle weights to the airport. Just make sure that you put them through the X-ray machine because they
By the
will
way,
go
they
off.
don't love them in the X-ray machine. They're always pulling mine out.
Oh yeah, yeah. They always get pulled out, and it's like, what are you doing? It's like it's ankle weights.
Clearly.
I'm just exercising.
Can a girl get her steps in?
Yeah. So I just think of like, where can I work it in? At home fitness has really become a part of my life. I know that was big during COVID and has kind of, in some ways, people don't do it as much now. For me, that just makes the most sense. I like to be able to exercise when I want to exercise. I do go work out with a trainer maybe once, twice a week to lift weights at a gym. I work out doing that, but then I love doing like OB fitness. I do my SoulCycle bike at home. And once the weather's nice, to me, there's nothing better than a power walk.
West Side Highway. The
Yes.
energy over there is so good.
Yes, I love it. And being outside.
I think community and being in a studio is really great and powerful, but there's something to be said about the efficiency of an at-home workout.
Right. It's all about efficiency for me at this time in my life. I love when I can go to a class. Like if I can go to a class, I do enjoy it. Except I went last weekend to a Pilates class. I won't say where it was.
You got to tell me
And
afterwards.
I will tell you afterwards. And whatever they had cleaned the studio in was all I could smell the entire class. It drove me crazy.
We talked about this on your podcast, but fragrance has got to go.
It's got to go. It really has to go.
It's so bothersome. It gives me headaches. And if it's distracting you from your workout, which by the way, you're paying like $50 to do, and it's no joke right now in New York City to get into a class. It's like this whole process of like, I don't know how far out you booked.
It's so hard to get into a class.
It's a new thing in the last like 6 months.
It's like getting dinner reservations. You can't get them anymore.
I'm sick of it. I'm working out at home. I'm cooking at home. Like, I feel pushed into my home.
Yeah, you're right.
We're getting boxed out.
Like the apps to make your reservations, whether it's in a class or for dinner, were to make our lives easier, but now we can't get anywhere.
I'm waitlisted everywhere.
Yeah.
In every area of life.
If you're waitlisted,
correct,
then the rest of us are really in trouble.
It's actually out of hand. Okay, I want to pick your brain on some kitchen tips. For the person that is kind of like getting into cooking. I saw that you were talking about like a spring cleaning or a detox of your kitchen. What does that look like? So let's start with like creating a good base and then we can sort of like fill it in.
Yeah. So I love to have a spring cleaning reset moment. And I think it's important to get in your kitchen and really clean it. Like be really honest, take things off the shelf, get down on the floor, wipe those baseboards, all of that, clean underneath the stove.
Expiration dates, toss stuff.
Yes. And then look at everything that's in your refrigerator, in your freezer, in your pantry. Get rid of the stuff that's expired, but also get rid of the stuff that's no longer serving you. So think of it like your closet. Get rid of something that you haven't worn in a year or two. The same thing with your pantry. If it's something that you're not really eating, your family's not really into, put it into the donate pile. Or if there are foods that you know now you don't want to eat those ingredients, instead of thinking like, well, I don't want to waste it, I think it's more of a waste to put it in your body.
Absolutely agree.
So just get rid of it. Take it out of your life and simplify, organize. I think when you look at your pantry, your refrigerator, your fridge, and it's organized, it's less intimidating to cook. You know what you have, you know what you can work with. And I also think when you're in there really looking at all of it, you might have forgotten something that you have and you think, whoa, I can use that. I can make it. So it gives you new ideas. So I think get rid of those items that aren't serving you. Also look at all of your cooking, your cookware. Like we've now learned that black plastic Utensils are not great to cook
Yeah.
with. So
Like all I
get
used to
rid of
use.
those. Yeah. Get rid of that. Get rid of, if you've got nonstick pans that have scratches, get rid of those. The scratches then make it leach into your food. And take a really good look at what you're cooking with and get rid of that toxic cookware. I also really believe in getting rid of technology in the kitchen. So give yourself that time, that space to have a little tech break so that you are sitting and talking to the person you're with instead of looking at your phone. Even if it's just like you're talking about something and it's like, oh, let me look that up. You don't have to look it up right away. You don't have to have the answers. Just be with each other. And if you're by yourself, have a moment to be alone in your thoughts and to allow your mind to create and wonder.
That's so true. I think the more that I've gotten into cooking, which has kind of been like a recent thing for me, and part of that has been being in Clayton's kitchen, and it's so nice, and I'm organizing, and like there's something about setting yourself up for success in that way. And I really think of that as like a meditative moment when I'm just in there, I'm playing music, I'm drinking kombucha, I'm making like a simple dinner. Those are like my favorite me time moments.
Yeah, and there's something empowering about it as well.
Very.
It's like, look what I've created.
Yeah, I took this and I turned it into that.
And you made somebody happy with it.
Yeah.
Whether it was yourself or your partner, your family.
Yeah. In terms of staples for the kitchen, so let's say someone does the spring or summer cleaning, they've organized. What are some things that you recommend or that you personally like will always have on hand so that you can whip up a meal in a bind?
I'm always going to have pasta on hand, all different shapes and different kinds. I like regular pasta, but I also love lentil pasta. If I'm making something, it's a weeknight and I want something a little healthier, I go with the lentil pasta. I always have beans, canned and dried. I use those quite a bit. My canned tomatoes. I always have rice, quinoa, lentils that falls under the beans, full spice rack. And then when it comes to perishables, I always have onions, garlic, lemon, sweet potatoes. In the freezer, I'm stocked with my seafood. I told you I love the Fulton Fish Market. I get all that salmon. I love frozen salmon. That's a total staple for me to make a quick dinner. I have my different cheeses. Like there's always Parmesan and Pecorino in there. All the different condiments. And then fresh herbs. I think that adds so much to cooking.
You grow them or you just buy them?
In the Hamptons, we grow them. Here, I just buy them. I always buy a variety of herbs when I go to the grocery store. And I always have all the makings of a salad. I love big salads.
Yeah.
That's like my go-to for lunch. And I usually have canned salmon and canned tuna as well so that I can add that to my salad. Yogurt, cottage cheese, all that.
I love cottage cheese. I'm so glad it's having a
Love
comeback
cottage
moment.
cheese. Love. In the summertime, cottage cheese and peaches, can't beat it.
I'm just curious what your coffee or like morning situation looks like. Like what kind of milks are you using? Are you a caffeine girl?
I love my coffee. That's like, do not pass go, do not collect $200,
Yes.
go directly to the coffee pot.
Yeah.
Ryan makes the coffee before bed and
it's teed
sets
up.
the timer. Yeah. And so I walk down and it's done. And I love like when I get out of bed and I can smell it. I'm like, I feel like so taken care of. This
Gets you right out of bed.
Yes. And half and half.
Same. I've always been pro dairy. Again, I'm glad that's having a comeback because I just think it's, if you can tolerate it in your system,
I love
it's
it.
so good.
I love it. And I'm sorry, skim milk or almond milk in coffee is disgusting. It's like
diabolical.
Dishwasher liquid, like awful.
I will do almond milk in my matcha lattes, but in a coffee, it separates. It's not good.
No, it's not good.
We don't need to mess with perfection.
If I can't have a tablespoon or two of half and
Correct.
half, then I'm doing something wrong the rest of the day.
We've got a problem.
Yeah.
Greater than that. In terms of little kitchen hacks, I saw that you posted recently about, so as we were talking about, I'm sort of newly in my cooking era, right? I'm chopping up garlic. I'm probably doing it all wrong, but like I'm doing it. I saw that you were talking about using a grater for garlic. And I was like, oh my God, I've been sitting there like with a big knife trying to get it really small. That blew my mind. talk about that, and also like any other little like hacks that you have.
My love of grating garlic is pretty new. It's like in the last year or two.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're doing a great job chopping it up with your knife. Give yourself credit
Thank
for
you.
all that you're doing. I've seen your cooking. It looks delicious. So
Thank
give
you.
yourself more credit. So I started grating garlic just on the little microplane like you would zest a lemon on, because I think it, like, not all recipes do I do it this way, but there's something about the way that it then just gets all in the
juicy.
food. Yeah. And it's like, feels more evenly dispersed. So I love grating garlic. That's like, I do it quite a bit now. I mean, my
Great.
fingers probably like have a permanent smell
The
of
way
garlic.
it doesn't go away.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you ever save the grated garlic, or it's always like just
I
one
do
time
it
use?
fresh. Yeah. Right to order.
Anything else you do to kind of like make life easier and or just that enhances the food that people might not know?
Well, I think citrus and vinegar are two things that really, really make a difference. You need that hit of acid in food. The acidity really will speak volumes when you're eating something, especially if it's fatty. So if you're making, like you had mentioned to me, you wanted to make like a beef stew, at the end, add a tablespoon of vinegar to it, and then let it simmer like another half hour or so. That's going to intensify all the flavor and just make it a little louder. So I love a hit of acid in just about everything, whether it's a squeeze of lemon, like even if you're grilling a steak and at the end you just rub a half a lemon on top of it. You're not going to necessarily take a bite and go, this tastes lemony. You're just going to think like,
Appreciate the
this
flavor
is
more.
so good, because it like cuts through that fat and it just balances everything out. And salt, like it's really basic, but you got to salt your food.
Yeah.
And that's why when you go to a restaurant, it tastes so good. They've really salted
Tons of
it.
salt.
Yeah. And in all the cooking competitions that I've judged over the years, usually what trips somebody up, even a very seasoned chef, is just that they forgot to put enough salt.
It's really that simple.
Yeah, it's that simple.
Salt, lemon, vinegar.
Salt and like a little bit of pepper is, to me, all you need on a roast chicken, on a great steak. I don't even use that much pepper anymore. Like I've really kind
Really?
of cut down on my black pepper use. It's just about salt and acid, and put some fat in there too. I love, a good extra virgin olive oil, and I love butter,
Me
and
too.
I love cooking with ghee as well.
Same. The Fourth and Heart ghee I keep on hand. It's just so flavorful.
Yeah, and you get the flavor and you get a higher smoke point.
I really appreciate that with all of your culinary knowledge and skill set, that you also like keeping it simple at home with your cooking.
I love simple food.
It's very refreshing. And I think it also makes it, I don't know, it makes me feel good that like we're cooking similar things, right? Talk to us about your sheet pan dinners, because I think that's a really good thing that people can just start immediately doing.
Love a sheet pan. Your sheet pan should be your best friend.
Yes.
It's really just a way to not have to do a lot of dishes. Sheet pan with parchment paper, and it's like so easy then. I usually just look at what vegetables I have in the fridge, cut them to a similar size of what's going to get done at a similar time, and then judge how long that needs to cook and how long your protein needs to cook. So like if I'm making like a shrimp sheet pan meal, I'll put the vegetables in first because I know those are going to need to cook longer. Take them out after like 15, 20 minutes, add the shrimp, and then put it back in the oven and cook until those are done. So just kind of like gauging how long things need to cook. And then I have other recipes that everything cooks at the same time.
That's nice.
So I love to do salmon, like a center cut of a whole pound of salmon, put that on, and then do cubed sweet potatoes and broccoli around it. And that all takes about 35 minutes.
So easy.
It's so easy. It's
And
so
so
easy.
are you just like olive oil, salt, and pepper? Like very
for
simple?
the most part. That salmon, I like to mix stone ground mustard and honey and pour that all over the salmon. And then some of it kind of drips off and it mixes into the broccoli and the sweet potatoes. It's one of my favorites.
I'm literally going to make that tonight. Sounds amazing.
It's so good. It's so easy.
Yeah.
And that's like, you have all your condiments in your fridge and you can just kind of play around with them.
That's where it's nice to have a base. I've found like, I feel like when I was living alone, I was doing so much a la la carte shopping. You know, it's like I wanted to make muffins and I have literally no flour, baking soda, baking powder, anything. And so everything kind of felt like a task. So when you set yourself up with basics, it makes cooking at home a lot more attainable and attractive.
Totally. If you stock that pantry, cooking's going to be so much easier. You can get home and say, well, what am I going to make? I got nothing. Pull out the spaghetti, chop up some garlic and some crushed red pepper and olive oil, and you have a great spaghetti aglio olio.
So easy.
Easy.
Ooh, I want that now. Katie, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Where can everyone find you? On social, on TV, all the places?
So on social, I'm at Katie Lee Biegel, and you can find me on TV Saturday mornings on The Kitchen at 11.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Oh, and your podcast.
Oh, yeah. And my podcast, All on the Table.
Great.
So I'm so excited for our episode together. You were so terrific.
Thank you.
Really fun to get to know you better.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.